Good morning, team. Today is Wednesday, April 29th, and I'm super excited to be here with you again on this rainy morning. Today, we are going to look at pollution in the ocean. If you have not completed your Hello Morning survey, please go and complete that now. If you haven't completed your Hello Morning survey, please pause the video and go do that now. Thanks, team. Let's jump into our science and COVID-19 facts of the day. So, you can click here to read the full article, but Governor Abbott on Monday released a plan to reopen Texas. So, I want to go over a couple of the changes that are going to be happening soon. So, first of all, the stay at home order expires on Thursday, with some businesses being able to reopen on Friday. So, what that means is that retail stores, restaurants, movie theaters, malls, museums, and libraries can open May 1st, which is Friday, but are limited to 25% capacity. Okay. In addition to that, museums and libraries are not going to be able to have any sort of hands on exhibits open. Okay. But these establishments can be open on Friday, but are limited to 25% capacity. Also, outdoor sports like golf and tennis can resume. However, they're limited to 4 players and social distancing still applies. So, I know a lot of you guys like to play basketball outside and things like that. It's really important to understand that a sport like basketball would not include social distancing unless you're doing like a shoot off where you are standing 6 feet apart. Okay. Still closed are barbershops, hair salons, bars, and gyms. So these establishments are still closed. There's a phase 2 that the governor plans to release that would, they're hinting, hopefully include these. However, right now these things are still closed. Now, with these changes taking place, it's important to understand that the science is saying that the number of cases in Texas has continued to increase daily, and they're not actually sure if Texas has reached its peak yet or not. So, the peak, remember, is the highest number of cases, a highest number of active cases. Okay. In addition to that, I forgot to add this to the slide, but they are saying that in the state of Texas, there have not been per number of people here the needed number of tests administered yet. Okay, so these are 2 things to keep in mind. Now, I want you to go to this post in Google Classroom and I want you to answer the question: how do you feel about these changes? Okay, will you be going out more? Are you nervous? Are you excited? Are you looking forward to that stay at home order being lifted? Or do you feel like, I'm not really quite sure if I'm ready to go out yet? So I want you to go to Google Classroom and I want you to answer this question. Go. Great. Now, today we are going to look at pollution in the ocean in this assignment called Ocean Garbage Patch. So you are going to actually judge, okay, the extent of the problem of pollution in the oceans. So as we are learning about the importance of the ocean, we want to consider our impact on it, okay? We learned about how many things that the ocean provides to us, remember, including transportation, food, its own ecosystems. Uh, um, it cleans carbon, it provides oxygen, okay? All of those things are really, really important. Yesterday, we actually took a look at oil rigs. So, oil rigs have this interesting relationship with the oceans where oil spills are obviously detrimental to the ecosystem. However, scientists also discovered that those rigs themselves had promoted marine habitats, okay, in a lot of places. So that's kind of an interesting twist to the oil rigs. Today, we're actually going to focus on the problem of pollution in the ocean using Actively Learn. So, I know that Mr. Balter has used this with you guys. And so, right now, I'm going to jump over to the Actively Learn assignment. When you go in Google Classroom, you're going to open up the assignment. This is actually a printed out copy of it, but you're going to go through the assignment and it's going to look like this. So we're going to go through this together, okay? Now I want you to ask yourself as we read, how does plastic waste affect marine life? So we want to keep that question in the back of our minds, okay? So first, I want you to take this poll. Of all the plastic produced each year on Earth, which is more than 250 million tons, okay, of plastic that is produced each year, how much do you think ends up in the ocean? Would you say less than 1%, 1% to 5%, 6% to 10%, 11 to 15, or 15% plus? So in your Actively Learn, you're going to choose one of these options, okay? Now we're going to explore this idea. So how could these balloons kill a sea turtle? Balloons flying off into the sky symbolize freedom and happiness. Eventually, those balloons pop and the plastic falls to the surface. Much of this plastic will end up in the sea where it may be accidentally ingested by a marine organism with dire results. Marine trash. Trash from land may end up as trash in the ocean, sometimes extremely far from land. Some of it will eventually wash ashore, possibly far from where it originated. So here we can see this picture where trash has washed up on a beach, okay? Sources of trash. Although people had once thought that the trash found everywhere at sea was from ships, it turns out that 80% is from land. So a lot of people think, oh, that trash is from like ships throwing things into the water, but it turns out it actually is from us on the land, okay? Some of that is from runoff, some is blown from nearshore landfills, and some is actually dumped directly into the sea. The 20% that comes from ships at sea includes trash thrown overboard by large cruise ships and many other vessels. It also includes lines and nets from fishing vessels. Ghost nets, nets abandoned by fishermen intentionally or not, float the seas and entangle animals so that they cannot escape. Containers sometimes go overboard in storms. Some noteworthy events, like a container of rubber ducks that entered the sea in 1992, are used to better understand ocean currents. The ducks went everywhere. So here you see a number one. That means that there's a note in the article. So I'm going to scroll down to where that note is and find my number one. So the rubber ducks that fell overboard in the Pacific Ocean in 1992 have been found in Hawaii, Alaska, South America, Australia, the Pacific Northwest, as well as far away as Scotland. So this container of rubber ducks went overboard. Sorry, team, I'm trying to find my place where I was. And ended up in all of those places, okay? Now let's look at the makeup of trash. About 80% of the trash that ends up in the oceans is plastic. So plastic is a huge problem, okay? This is because a large amount of the trash produced since World War II is plastic. Also, many types of plastic do not biodegrade, so they simply accumulate, okay? So biodegrade means that they're going to be able to break down, and many types of plastic now cannot be broken down. So they simply accumulate or like pile up, okay? While many types of plastics photodegrade, that is, they break up in sunlight, this process only works when the plastics are dry. Plastic trash in the water does not break down into smaller pieces, eventually becoming molecule-sized polymers. Other trash in the oceans includes chemical sludge and materials that do biodegrade, like wood. So now we have a question. We want to know, what happens to plastics in the water? Do they multiply? Do they photodegrade? Do they biodegrade? Or do they become molecule-sized polymers? I'm going to give you 30 seconds to answer that question. So if we go back up to the article here, this sentence right here tells us that plastic trash does break down into smaller pieces. It eventually becomes molecule-sized polymers. So the correct answer is the last one. Plastics become molecule-sized polymers. Let's move on. Some plastics contain toxic chemicals, such as bisphenol A. Plastics can also absorb organic pollutants that may be floating in the water, such as the pesticide DDT, which is banned in the US but not in other nations, and some endocrine disruptors. Okay, so these are very toxic things that can be in plastics. Marine birds, such as albatross, or animals like sea turtles, live most of their lives at sea and just come ashore to mate. These organisms can't break down the plastic and they may eventually die, okay, like we see in this picture. Boats may be affected. Plastic waste is estimated to kill 100,000 sea turtles and marine mammals annually, but exact numbers are unknown. Plastic shopping bags are extremely abundant in the oceans. So you can see an image here. Okay, these are plastic shopping bags. Now in Austin, we actually have to bring our own bags to the store, okay? This is one of the environmental measures that some stores have taken, or cities and ordinances have taken to try to reduce some of this plastic waste, okay? But plastic shopping bags are extremely abundant in the oceans. If an organism is accidentally ingest one, it may clog digestion and cause starvation by stopping food from moving through or making the animal not feel hungry, okay? So animals are actually consuming these plastic bags. Trash from the lands all around the North Pacific is caught up in currents. The currents bring the trash into the center of the North Pacific Gyre. Scientists estimate that it takes about 6 years for trash to move from west coast of North Africa to the center of the gyre. The concentration of trash increases toward the center of the gyre. While recognizable pieces of garbage are visible, much of the trash is tiny plastic polymers that are invisible but can be detected in water samples. So, if these little pieces of plastic are floating in the water, we can't see them, but we know that they're there because we can find them in water samples. What do you think that means as far as the animals that are swimming in this water? Okay, the particles are at or just below the surface within the gyre. Plastic confetti-like pieces are visible beneath the surface at the gyre center. The size of the garbage patch is unknown, since it can't be seen from above. Some people estimate that it's twice the size of continental US with a mass of 100 million tons. So we want to know, here's your next question. What happens to trash once it enters the water? Is it washed back onto shore within a few days? Does it remain in a relatively close vicinity to its original location but sink down to the bottom? Does it travel far but takes years to do so, becoming trapped in a gyre, or is it unknown where most of the trash ends up? So if you answered question number 3, it travels far but takes years to do so, becoming trapped in a gyre, that is the correct answer. In some areas, plastics have 7 times the concentration of zooplankton. So remember, zooplankton we learned is a producer, okay, that actually is the source of food for many organisms in the marine biome, okay? This means that filter feeders are ingesting a lot of plastics. This may kill the organisms, or the plastics may remain in their bodies. They are then eaten by larger organisms that store the plastics and may eventually die. Fish may eat organisms that have eaten plastic and then be eaten by people. This also exposes humans to toxic chemicals that the fish may even have ingested with the plastic. There are similar patches of trash in the gyres of the North Atlantic and Indian Oceans. The southern hemisphere has less trash buildup because less of the region is continents. In summary, trash from land, about 80%, or human activities at sea, about 20%, ends up in the ocean. About 80% of this trash is plastic. Plastic trash not usually biodegrade in the ocean, but just forms tiny polymers that resemble plankton. Plastic pieces of trash and plastic molecules can kill marine organisms by becoming lodged in their digestive systems or by trapping them so they can't swim. So here's the question that you need to answer. One of your friends argues that ocean pollution is not that big of an issue because the oceans are so large. They cover 70% of the earth. To what extent do you agree with this statement? I want you to cite specific evidence from the text to support your claim. So, when I say go, you are going to open the Ocean Garbage Patch Actively Learn assignment in Google Classroom. You are going to answer the questions. For the last question, you're going to use 3 to 5 complete sentences. Do you agree or disagree? Include at least one sentence from the article in your response. When you are finished, you're going to turn it in Google Classroom. Of course, reach out to me with any questions. Here's my email address and phone number, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks, team.